Lee Marvin once candidly discussed the 7 actors that he disliked most. He was born on February 19th, 1924, in New York City, from a family with a long tradition of the military life. His father was a veteran of World War I, and his brother also served in uniform. That early experience with discipline and service gave Marvin the rough-hewn masculinity and hard-crusted personality that would eventually characterize his on-screen career. As a child, Marvin went to school in Florida and New Jersey but was restless, defiant, and constantly in trouble. He was having a difficult time with the harsh regimen of academics. He had a wild streak that would ultimately power the raw energy of his performances. His life was forever altered when World War II erupted, and he signed up for service in the U.S. Marine Corps at the age of only 18. Marvin served in the 4th Marine Division within the Pacific Theater of Operations and participated in the severe Battle of Saipan during 1944. There he was severely injured by machine gun fire, shot through the buttocks and sciatic nerve. He spent over a year recuperating in a Navy hospital and was decorated with the Purple Heart. The ordeal left him emotionally and physically scarred, but also imbued him with a depth and authenticity that differentiated his performances as soldiers, outlaws, and hardmen from everybody else. While many actors merely acted heroically, Marvin had lived through the frenzy of war. Audiences were able to feel the truth in his acting derived from real suffering. Post-war, he moved from job to job until he wound up a plumber's assistant at a community theater where his unplanned journey to acting started. Through a stroke of luck, Marvin's entry into acting started when he substituted for a sick actor. That short stint on stage kindled a flame, and under the direction of mentors, he sought formal schooling in New York at the American Theater Wing. Tall, tough, and intensely natural in demeanor, he soon attracted notice and made the transition from stage to screen. During his early years in Hollywood, Marvin was frequently employed as types, the toughs, villains, and soldiers, especially in westerns and war films. His breakthrough came in the 1950s with characteristic performances, notably a brutal gangster in The Big Heat, 1953, and a thuggish thug in Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, whose menacing presence raised the stakes. Throughout the decade, Marvin established himself as one of Hollywood's most reliable on-screen villains, bringing grime and menace to all roles. But the 1960s brought a sea change when he transitioned from being a consistent supporting actor to a full-fledged star. In John Ford's classic, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, Marvin gave a memorable performance as the cruel outlaw Liberty Valance, going toe-to-toe with John Wayne and James Stewart and churning out one of the greatest Western villains in the history of cinema. He surprised audiences once more in Cat Bellalew 1965 as he displayed surprising comedic genius, portraying both the inebriated gunslinger Kid Shalene and the malevolent Tim Strong. Marvin was so adept at balancing humor and pathos that he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, cementing his position in the upper echelons of Hollywood stardom. Penning this success, Marvin found himself one of the busiest leading men of his time. He played the role of leader in The Dirty Dozen 1967, a classic war movie that swept the box office and became a cultural reference point. As Major John Reisman, the tough officer in charge of a company of inmates on a killing mission, Marvin delivered a commanding performance that delighted audiences, but also helped establish the template for war and action films for years to follow. Of his later notable work were Point Blank, 1967, a stylish black-and-white near thriller in which Marvin portrayed a cold, unyielding anti-hero, and Pain Your Wagon, 1969, a musical which shocked people by finding him belting out songs, grary and off-key, but memorable. For all his box office success, never did Marvin go along with Hollywood's expectations. He prized independence and fought against the succumbs of celebrity culture. Fame had little allure for him. Marvin, on the other hand, sought tranquility in the simplest of things: fishing, boating, and being outdoors. He often retreated to his villas in Tucson, Arizona, and Baja California, Mexico, where he could live peacefully in obscurity. He was also candid about his alcohol issues, a battle that at times left its scars not only on his career, but on his relationships as well. As the years passed, Marvin continued to give good performances in movies like Emperor of the North 1973, The Klansman 1974, Avalanche Express 1979, and Gorky Park 1983. Age did not mellow his on-screen presence. He was still a dominant figure whose rugged, unbending masculinity seemed an ever more aberrant commodity in contemporary Hollywood. His final appearance was in The Delta Force, 1986, starring Chuck Norris, where he was a battle-hardened military commander, a befitting swan song to his decades-long career as an action hero. Off-screen, life too was full of drama. In April 1952, at the beginning of his Hollywood rise, Marvin married Betty Ebling. They were married for 15 years and produced 4 children. Their eldest, Christopher Lamont Marvin, 1952 to 2013, continued the family legacy before his death decades later. The pair had 3 daughters, Courtney Lee Marvin, Cynthia Louise Marvin, and Claudia Leslie Marvin, 1958 to 2012. Despite all the turmoil of his career and personal demons, fatherhood brought stability and seriousness to Marvin's life, anchoring him in the midst of Hollywood celebrity excess. Even though the public persona of Lee Marvin was one of a street-tough, no-nonsense screen character, those who knew him best tended to use his children as proof of a sweeter, more reserved side, one which was very different from his screen character. However, even amidst the stabilizing influence of family, his relationship with Betty Ebling was anything but smooth. The constant pressures of Hollywood, along with Marvin's alcoholism and erratic behavior, put an increasingly straining burden on the marriage. 2 years into their separation, the couple finally ended things in an official capacity in January of 1967. The divorce was difficult enough for Lee and Betty, but for their 4 children, it meant living life caught between the glamour of Hollywood and the cracks in the home. Years later, in 2010, Betty gave her insight through her memoir Tales of a Hollywood Housewife, giving an honest glimpse into their life together during Marvin's climb to fame. In the memoir, she explained the glam and the struggle of marrying a man whose career was so much a demand on his time. Among her disclosures was the assertion that Marvin had cheated on her, accusing him of an affair with the alleged actress in Braftoft, an element that created another layer of depth to the already troubled portrait of Marvin's love life. Post-divorce, Marvin's affairs continued to hold the public interest. His long-standing relationship with Michelle Triola became particularly notorious not only for the affair itself, but for the pioneering palimony lawsuit that ensued. The case, which unfolded in the 1970s, pushed the rights of unmarried couples through the courts and made national headlines. Eventually, after the turmoil of that era, Marvin reunited with Pamela Fillili, a high school sweetheart. The reunion was more than an old-age romance. It was a return to familiarity, comfort, and a piece of the less complicated world Marvin had experienced before Hollywood stardom transformed his life. Lee Marvin wed Pamela Fillili in 1970, a union that was significantly longer lasting than the previous ones. Pamela was a constant presence throughout the latter part of his career and was there for him in his final illness in the 1980s, remaining at his bedside until his death in 1987. 10 years later, in 1997, she wrote Lee, a romance, a memoir celebrating their love affair as well as her husband's life. In her book, Pamela provided not only stories of their life together, but an intimate portrait of the man behind the gravel-voiced anti-hero image. To the public, Marvin was the hard-edged star of The Dirty Dozen and Point Blank. To Pamela, he was also vulnerable, affectionate, and deeply human. The memoir was also a love letter and a tribute, making sure Marvin's memory lived on not just through his movie work, but also through the areas of companionship, loyalty, and family. Besides his personal life, Marvin was also famous for being blunt. Never a man to keep his sentiments to himself, he shocked Hollywood when he went on record with admitting there were indeed some actors he could not stand. Pressed to give names, Marvin didn't flinch. He named 7 men whose personality or profession had conflicted with his own. Each name was accompanied by a history of bitterness, grudges, or ideological differences that told us as much about Marvin's values as about the ones he disparaged. John Wayne was one of them. Although audiences believed that the two respected each other for their roles in war films and westerns, Marvin had an entirely different opinion in private. Their tension started in the course of filming the Camancheros and re-emerged when they engaged in a competition at the Academy Awards. Marvin, who had shed blood and fought during World War II, was annoyed at Wayne's well-crafted image as a war hero, all fully aware that Wayne had never fought. He allegedly said that Wayne was better suited to play the role of a soldier than anyone else, but had no ability whatsoever to handle the mud, blood, or bullets of actual war. Political differences also exacerbated the rift. Marvin could not abide Wayne's extreme conservatism, and their tension continued through the end of Marvin's life. Another individual on his list was Charles Bronson. Despite both being frequent stars in similar hard-hitting action movies, Marvin dismissed Bronson as self-absorbed and cold. Marvin felt Bronson relied too much on physical toughness and had not the emotional depth Marvin felt was the key to acting. Marvin's dissing of Charles Bronson went beyond his acting. He frequently bemoaned the fact that Bronson was aloof and refused to work with other cast members. The brooding, withdrawn personality of the actor contrasted harshly with Marvin's direct, in-your-face approach. At one of his greatest put-downs, Marvin said, "Working with Bronson is like discussing things with a wall, except the wall is more personable." Robert Mitchum was another advocate.